Welcome to YOLO Learning. How's it going, guys? So this is the final level of transformations. So if you get this, I will say you have mastered the skill called transformations of functions. Now, before we start, make sure you go watch level 1 step 3 or stage 3, level 2 stage 3 in order for you to be able to understand this without glitch. So I'll put a link somewhere over here at the top right corner of the screen. So make sure you go watch first before this. Now, in this stage, we have a function has a domain of x such that x is greater than or equal to -1. X is an element of real number. And the range of y such that y is less than 3 and y is an element of real number. Determine the domain and the range of a function that is transformed y equals -0.5 f at -4x. So when you do this type of question, you have to remember what domain and the range means. So let's take a look at the domain and range first. So what does it mean by domain? Well, domain is actually all the possible x values on the function, and the range is also all then the y value on the function. If you do understand what it means, and if you do understand what transformations means, your x and y values change based on the transformations, which means your domain and range will change and are being affected by all those transformations. So let's then get deeper with that concept. So here, let's take a look at what the transformations are and what it actually means and how it does. So let's do the review very quickly that transformations wise, our a is always being multiplied by the y because it says by a factor of and it's vertical. And our d always just adds to the y because you're just shifting vertically up and down. Whereas the b is then x then times 1 over b, since it always says by a factor of 1 over b, and your c value is always added to the x since you're moving horizontally left or right. And this tells me that our domain, which is our x values, is affected by just two things, affected by b and c, and same thing goes for the range. The y value isn't affected by a and d. If you do remember these, then it should be quite simple and easy. So I will highlight these in the same color so that you will be able to actually see it more clearly. So I will put the domain, the x values, dx values, dx values in all blue, the y values, the range, and the range all in the yellow highlighter so that you actually will be able to distinguish. So we're done with the concept. Let's actually get to the actual numbers. So in this case, we have y equals -0.5 f at -4x.
So my a is then -0.5, my b is then -4, my c is 0, my d is also 0. So again,
remember the domain, which I'm going to highlight in blue, and the range, which I will highlight in yellow, and they do affect in such a way. So let's take a look. Our domain, it was x being greater than or equal to -1. Now x being an element of real number is not affected by the transformations because it just tells you that it is every single possible x value, and same thing goes for the y being an element of real number too. So I'll just take a look at the restrictions. If there is no restrictions, then that domain is not affected by any of the transformations. So here, our x value, the domain, is then multiplied by a factor of 1 over b. So it is then -1 over 4 that we're multiplying, but then we're adding 0, which is the c value. So something that you have to be very, very careful of, which I will highlight in this brown, is when you multiply the negative number to the inequality in this case, it always opens up its, let's say, mouth direction to the opposite. So that gives me that it opens up towards the right instead of the left anymore, and then x stays the same, everything that you just multiply by the number. So the -1 times -1 over 4 gives me just 1 over 4, and there's no addition to it because it's +0. So this is now your new domain's restriction. Same thing goes for the range, where we have y is less than 3, and this one is then now times by -0.5, which is the a value, plus 0, which is the d. So the negative in this case, which I will highlight in pink, again affects the opening direction of the inequality. So it affects to the opposite and opens to the opposite, then y. So y is now greater greater than instead of less than, and you just multiply the 3 by negative 0.5, so we have negative than 1.5. So our new domain is x being less than or equal to 1 over 4. Our new range is then y being greater than negative 1.5. So something that you have to be careful of is the inequality's opening side based on number that you're multiplying, or the sign of the number that you're multiplying. So the key here is very simple. The key, your domain, which is the x value, is affected by b and c. And the b is always reciprocal. How it affects is reciprocal. Remember that, please. This is quite important. Do not just multiply the b. And your range, which is the y value, is affected by a and d. And they're just as it is. And when you multiply something by a negative number to the inequality, the side or opening side of inequality changes. So opening side or direction of inequality changes to the opposite. So make sure you remember this, then it will be quite easy to do. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you've enjoyed the video, if this was helpful, please don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button. Thanks for watching YOLO channel. I'll see you guys next. Bye bye.